straight and narrow in the land. Politics, religion, and economic issue, regional, international, spiritual issues too, agricultural, environmental, and trending to subject matter. We fear none, we back down. Freedom of speech is enshrined in the land. God, we freedom, jealous and they in Cuba, Russians and Chinese and lucky like we. Right now, North Korea wish they had it too. Most of the Caribbean lucky like we. Studio Galaxy Day for you and me. Galaxy Equalizer ready like Freddy. And Studio Galaxy 473 in Confero. We freedom of speech is sacrosanct. Make use of it. Let no one challenge. Blow your shell, beat your drum, tell others. Like and share, subscribe and discuss it too. Let the world know Studio Galaxy is around. Galaxy in Confero, hope you know. 473 standing strong is yours, you know. The medium, an opportunity for you. Make your contribution, let them know.
Welcome, brothers. Welcome, sisters. Welcome to our program this Saturday on Studio Galaxy 473 in Confero. And as usual, we always invite interaction. The number to call is 536-2558. And the topic this morning is on agriculture. First part of our program. The authorities have disappointed the traditional farmers. The traditional farmers in Grenada are very, very disappointed. They do not believe that the authorities that be remember them. They didn't ask for much. They just did not want to be forgotten. Remember, we are the Galaxy Equalizers. Brother Joshua, not with us at this time. And the number that you can call is 536-2558. And we always welcome interaction. On this program, we provoke discussion. We are not satisfied that the farmers are moving, the farming community is moving. We believe the farmers are too laid back. Our farmers are not great lobbyers. And we have to be cognizant of the fact that any country in the world where 80% of the people are directly or indirectly involved in agriculture, those countries are poor countries. So although Grenada have the most land owners in the region and perhaps the world, people have freehold, they have the authority on the land. It is not mega projects you expect in agriculture, but you expect strong niche market. You expect a more buoyant cottage industry, and you expect the farmers to maximize the income from the land. If you have land, you hardly could starve. Well, you're not supposed to starve. And if you have a country with the most land owners in the region, and perhaps the world, that country should not starve in a crisis. Even if we had food shortage for 3 years, people supposed to be able to eat and function. Grenada have had the traditional farmers. And lest we forget, we are the second largest exporter of nutmeg after Indonesia. We had a competitive edge on Indonesia because we were more organized than them. We had a powerful nutmeg association with the necessary legislation to back it in the country. And then we were exporters of cocoa. And while the African countries had a greater production than us, we were known to have a unique quality. So we feel good. We have cocoa, we have nutmeg, and we have a good quality. Well, the banana industry, we know what happened to that. While we bury our head in the sand, Chiquita banana, the big companies in America challenged Europe, and we lost the preferential market. You see, Europe had a little sympathy for us because they enslaved us. So a little guilt, a little economic guilt, geopolitical economic guilt. It's not a bad thing if you could negotiate, you know. You could always remind the Europeans you enslaved me, you must help me. And they would yield. So we had cocoa and we had nutmeg. Coffee and cotton we used to grow in the past. And sugar cane. That went out the road. Because we decided it was uneconomical to continue with the sugar cane for sugar. Although we did a small amount for rum. And again, since rum was beneficial in the market, we should continue, perhaps we should have given serious consideration in producing more sugarcane for rum. But that didn't work out. And you know the story with Cane Co. Cane Co came in a couple of years ago and established a product, renting maybe 200, 300 abandoned acres of land and plant cane to make a unique rum to export to the European market. A lot has happened since then. I don't know if the war in Europe or if the geopolitics affected the product in Grenada. But Cane Co started with a bang, employ more than 100 people, informed the rum companies here that they would not be competing with them on the local market because their rum are principally for export. But Cane Co died. We have the commodity boards, the nutmeg board and the cocoa board. I do not believe that they seek the farmer's interest. I've asked myself 1,000 times, why? Why? The farmers have representation at the highest level in Grenada, in the upper house, in parliament. We have an individual who represents the farming community here, the trade union have representation, and the business sector. So we have 3 senators, private sector, trade union, and the farmers are the highest representation. In addition to that, traditionally, the farmers' organization have always been attached, inseparable, entangled encapsulated with the GNP party and then with the NDC party. Now, you have to understand, the GNP party then kind of represented the privilegencia and the intellectuals in Grenada, while Gary party represented the estate workers. And the majority of people in the country were estate workers, fishermen, and hunters. So some of the same cultural mentality continue in the commodity boards, the cocoa and nutmeg board. They generally are very supportive to the NDC. And that's where my difficulty comes in. They have the political clout. Why is it? It seems, and do it appear on the ground, that they forget the farmers. And when you make a statement like that, obviously you must advance some arguments to justify that statement. We have just had burial in 2022. And we were very fortunate to have obtained $118 million to assist the government to address the traumas and the consequences of the hurricane. So yes, the best way to do that is to give people money. That money can help the government address the losses. The government would have lost some schools and buildings damaged and etc. The farmers' lands would have been destroyed. And that destruction was particularly in Carriacou and Pitimatnik and St. Patrick's. Now, Carriacou and Pitimatnik are not considered as strong traditional farmers. The fishing industry, yes, and they have a livestock program up there, but generally it's a kind of Lego season. Your animal graze wise. They don't have much organized farm. They don't have a dairy. Maybe the strongest organized farm is the government. And if you see it, you'll cry. St. Patrick's was definitely hard hit, and some aspects of St. Andrews severely, and the other areas slightly. St. Andrews is considered as the breadbasket. And the traditional farmers there are nutmeg farmers, cocoa farmers. The government had no program, as far as I know, to help the farmers. The government came up with money to provide for the farmers for their economic situation. Income support. They call it income support. The farmers would have lost the ability to obtain money from sale. They might be in a bad condition, and government give them some money. Government organize a scale. If you had $5,000, 5 acres of land or less, the government would give you $5,000. 5,000. 5 acres of land or less, I think 4,500. Something like that. And if you had under 10 acres of land, over 5 acres of land, over 5 acres, you would get $9,000. Well, obviously, that was not any fair distribution based upon loss. But government said it was income support. It was not necessarily to assist you in agriculture. So one would have hoped that the government had a program, bearing in mind that they get $118 million to help the farmers rebuild their land. I've often said that one of the things I expected most from the government was technical assistance. husbandry practice. We have a hurricane that is very detrimental to the traditional crops, nutmeg and cocoa. Cocoa could stand up better in hurricane. But because of the level of intercropping, a lot of the cocoa that is damaged by the tumbling effect. Trees fall on the cocoa. And then we send in the cutters. And when the chainsaw start, some of the chainsaw operators, without much agriculture knowledge about husbandry practice, this chainsaw becomes very romantic in their hand and they just cut. So I expected the government to come up with a strong husbandry practice to encourage farmers that if you are replanting, that you should pay attention to the distance that you plant because of the tumbling effect. No one in Grenada have to tell you that some of the agriculture trees are growing too tall. No one have to tell you that. The nutmeg tree way up in the sky. The cocoa trees, there are some old cocoa fields, you have to climb them to pick them, to harvest the cocoa. We say pick the cocoa. You have to climb them to harvest the cocoa. So you have to have long rods. And one would have thought that after we had a hurricane 20 odd years ago, double hurricane, and now we had Beryl, that it is important to have a strong husbandry practice and encourage farmers what distance they should plant the nutmeg and cocoa. What height you should tolerate. So farmers are supposed to be pruning the nutmeg to reduce the height of the trees. Because when the hurricane comes, it normally breaks out pieces in the nutmeg tree. So there was none coming from the commodity boards. None. The commodity boards forgot the farmers. Both the cocoa board and the nutmeg board. Cocoa is a forest crop. It could take some chafing. Vine, pumpkin could go on it and it don't seriously affect the tree. But your pruning methods have to be careful because otherwise you would not have much fruit, much growth on the tree. So how could we have a nutmeg association, a cocoa association, and they totally ignore recovery husbandry practice? I don't know if the cocoa association have its own extension staff. In yesteryear, they did. But the technology available now warranted that the Cocoa Association provide information for farmers. And they did not. The farmers did not get any bonus from the Cocoa Association and the Nutmeg Association. And even the income assistance provided by the government was basically to government supporters. So if you was a farmer and you were known to be not in the NDC camp, you may not have received money. If you had enough clout in the NDC camp, instead of 9,000, they might have give 4,500. So it was done under straight political lines. I thought that was very unfortunate. I thought it was sad. How are you going to address the development of the traditional crops? Because cocoa is a crop that is needed on the international market. Chocolate is almost a romantic crop. And as people get wealthier, and more people are getting wealthier today. We have more millionaires in the world today than any other time. And technology has provided the opportunity for millionaires to turn millionaire without much workers because they use the technology. So there is definitely a market for cocoa. There is definitely a market to consume more chocolate in Grenada and the Caribbean. Now, I ask myself, how come the people on the commodity boards don't know that? That there is a market, a niche market here for greater consumption of chocolate. Even in periods of festive seasons, Christmas, Independence, Valentine, Mother's Day, Easter, millions of dollars could be obtained if that market is explored. Sometimes, way back in economics, people learn about demand and supply. But then the word marketing becomes stronger. So if you're selling winter suit in the Sahara Desert, some people may buy. I have seen women with summer clothes in winter. If you go in Young Street, you might see women with summer clothes in winter. And I have seen women with winter boots in Grenada in summer. So it tells you if you market it, people, you could develop a market. And a lot of markets have been developed through modern day technology. Remember, you could give us a call on this program. Mm-hmm. The number is 536-2558. And we also encourage you to subscribe to our program, like our program, share it. Sometimes we complain that we're not doing well as a country, but we have to help one another to do well. And Studio Galaxy needs your help just by subscribing and sharing. That's how the technology works. The more you subscribe, the more you share, is the wider reach we have on the program. So the topic is the authorities disappointed the traditional farmers. And the Cocoa Association and the Nutmeg Association, traditionally I see them as agents of the political party. And nothing is wrong with that. If they are seeking the farmers' interest. If you're seeking the farmers' interest and you are closely associated with a political party, you have to be constantly in lobbying mode. When your party is not in power, you're strongly lobbying the other party. And when your party in power, you're lobbying your party. But they have not been doing that. They have not been helping the farmers. I don't know what Cocoa Association could say they have been doing over the last years to help the farmers. Now, if you go to St. George's and you're traveling from Grenville to St. George's on the left side of the road, at some time you will encounter a cocoa building and the name on it is a prime minister in the past who was associated with the NDC party. And I've asked 1,000 times, what did this individual do for the Nutmeg Association to justify his name being placed on the Nutmeg building? What did he do? I'm well aware that he was in a government that cut down Belvedere nutmeg. I think Belvedere nutmeg was introduced in 1884. They banned the nutmeg. And when he did that destruction of the nutmeg field, it was against the protests and the advice of every known extension officer in Grenada. And I know of no extension officer who would publicly agree with that act. We wondered whether that individual was bribed. What was his objective in cutting down Belvedere nutmeg? He was made known that if you plant banana in Belvedere, the risk of diseases is greater. The economic cost in terms of transportation and etc. And banana matures in 9 months to 1 year. So you are destroying a crop that was planted in 1884 that matures in 10 years to plant a crop that matures in 1 year, 9 months, 6 months to 9 months. So let's say 1 year. And I don't know why Nutmeg Association felt it necessary to honor an individual who has done nothing else but destroy the Banda nutmeg in Belvedere. When I say to you they are agent, they are a strong supporter of the NDC now, and they seem to forget that the principal role must be in the interest of the farmers. The Cocoa Association, you know the fiasco with chocolate. They have a factory that is operating under 20%. Some of the big wheels in the board is manager of the factory that we are here in. And they're getting to pay. Well, they're afraid to tell the public how much they're working for. In fact, they feel more comfortable now since the government have raised their pay by 300%. Their income, they feel more comfortable now. Because I believe they was in the top group where payment is concerned in the country. And how are they helping the farmers? I watch the cocoa fields. They seem to be ignored, and the husbandry practices is one thing. A number of individuals have sprung up, and they're doing little chocolate, which is very good. And farmers are selling the chocolate to them for 10 cents and 15 cents more. Well, why not? If the board is not going to give you any bonus, the board's still using a chalk to write on the board the day before when they buying cocoa. The board still have a secret chat room that they have select farmers on the chat room to inform them when they buying cocoa. I don't think they want much cocoa anyway. Now, it means that that crop would be placed under immense pressure because of the sauce-up industry. The sauce-up is a relatively new crop in terms of the traditional crop. We always had sauce-up trees to make babale. Principally what we do with sauce-up, we eat it so we make a babale. Or in yesteryear, some of the soothsayers used to say soak sauce-up in water, green sauce-up in water, and drink it. So it's going to prevent certain disease. And for cooling. That is how we basically use it. But now, the sauce-up industry is crying out for development. It has a very good price on the U.S. market. And Grenada is the only country. We're kind of lucky, you know. Sometimes we're born with a gold spoon. Mr. Exeter would say they tie gold on Grenada and Grenada shaking it out. Yeah, like that. One of the old dons in the country, the philosophers, used to run a big rum shop. You say, look at this gentleman. They tie gold on him. You shake it out. He meant the guy had an opportunity to go to GBSS. And his parents had some money. And the boy come out a vagabond. So he said they tie gold on him. Grenada have the opportunity to export fresh sauce up to the U.S. market. The farmer in Grenada get about $253 for the sauce up. Some farmers sit down in the veranda and the people who are buying the sauce up, the traders, send their workers to go to the field to harvest the sauce up and tell the farmer you get 500 pounds. Farmer say thank you and he get paid for it. Interesting arrangement. But some farmers are doing well with sauce up. Again, the authorities that be have ignored these industries. Grenada cannot supply sauce up, enough sauce up on the U.S. market. The market is theirs. They are the only country that can send fresh sauce up to the U.S. market. Mexico is knocking at the door. But Grenada, they tie gold on Grenada. They are the only country. Government have not make an attempt to plant 50 acres on a sauce up. Within 18 months, you could plant sauce up and have sauce up for the market. I always say 18 months and I say 3 years.
Yeah, it's more than 18 months.
I always say 18 months and then 3 years. Because we won't manage good. So it's about 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years good.
We won't manage good.
In 3 years, you go balance properly.
But government could have planned, if the NDC, from the time they come, had taken on the sauce up market and planted 50 acres of sauce up, now they would have been selling the sauce up from the 50 acres. Now I ask the question 1,000 times. What's wrong with the authorities that be? Why our people are the ones deceiving and tricking our people? Because it have to be some malady, some sickness
Malady.
for you not to do that. You have to remember when the government came into power, they appoint a minister of agriculture. I thought the individual they put in the Ministry of Agriculture was more experienced than any one of them in agriculture. He spent half his life in agriculture, in the pest management unit. That is Persuader. They gave Persuader about 10 or 12 advisors, and they call it an advisory lead. First time I hear that in the history. Normally you give a man one advisor. They gave him about 12. I don't know if they have operated, if they functioned for about 6 to 9 months. Because this government do not readily provide information for you. So you have to always trying to cipher out information. You have to have a vacuum to always pull out bits and pieces and put it together. But if you give me 12 advisors, they have to come up with a book. For 6 months or 9 months, they paid 12 people to advise the Minister of Agriculture. The only thing I heard the minister say that was dramatic was to jail predial people in predial Lassini, call them lunatics and idiots. And so.
You don't like that?
It couldn't be.
Yeah.
He has not come up with any solution. But what happened to the people who were paid? Was it a scam? Was it just a means to reward certain people who support the NDC to give them some money? Did they ever had a meeting? I would really like to see the minutes. If they had a meeting, that they could have presented the minutes. And that should be there in the history and archives. Because the first time a minister of agriculture have 12 person, they call them advisory leads. I don't know how much they pay them, if $1 million. I don't know how much they pay this 12 person. If it's $500,000 for 6 months. I don't know. But they should have a book. They should have about 1,000-page document on agriculture that the minister and other ministers in the future could take guide from. But they had nothing. That's why I believe that the authorities have seriously disappointed the farmers.
I have a question for you, Mr. Pierre.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Somebody's asking, why are the farmers struggling to access basic tools and resources?
Well, I believe the farmers are very laid back.
They're not aggressive enough.
They're not aggressive. They're not lobbying. The institutions, the authorities that the farmers that exist, for instance, the nutmeg board, the cocoa board, they forget is the farmers they're interested in. They playing politician and nobody really seeking the farmers' interest. These people are pathogenic parasites. They're sucking the farmers. You can't tell me you have the cocoa board and the nutmeg board.
Morning, Mr. Watts.
Yeah. Dennis Noel was once a prominent secretary in agriculture, chief technical agriculture. When he retired, he started a nutmeg issue. And he used to buy nutmeg oil and make a nutmeg product. I think he still have the product on the road. Normally in Grenada, when a man dies, business die. The children might mimic themselves around, but most of these people are from very unproductive children. But you still have nutmeg oil. And one person that used to work with Dennis Noel, she started to make a product from nutmeg. She changed the name and she making a product. But you cannot have a massive board like that with all this history. The intelligentsia lives in the Nutmeg Association. These individuals have one amount of certificate, a briefcase of certificate. But they have not assisted the traditional farmers. And it saddens my heart. You have some vegetable farmers, they kind of hit and run, you know. They may plant a crop and they're waiting on the market, and sometimes they don't get through the market and they hold up again in time. Well, I'm going to plant for the Easter, I'm going to plant to harvest in August, kind of, you know. So where are we going with that type of agriculture? And why we have these high-paid individuals in the Nutmeg Association, the Cocoa Association. These individuals are not only in the institutions, they're very powerful in the NDC government. The Speaker of the House is seriously associated with the Nutmeg and Cocoa Association. The farmers' representative in the House is seriously associated with the Cocoa and Nutmeg Association. Persuader work in the Ministry of Agriculture for half a life. He spent the next half of his life in the commodity boards, and he on the third half of his life in the government and associated with agriculture. So these individuals have some very powerful people associated with them, but it seems to abandon the farmer. I don't know if they believe the farmer just generally is poor and the farmers are commoners, so they are a different elite. I don't know. I'm struggling. We have the traditional farmer in Grenada have not been helped by the intelligentsia. Our intelligentsia should be like a think tank. That is our brightest sons and daughters. So they should be able to come up with answers that address some of our problems. I've said on other programs before the reaction of John Compton to the University of the West Indies and Forbes Bonham to the University of the West Indies.
I have a next question for you again.
Yeah, go right ahead. We take a question.
Somebody on the chat is asking, if the government invests heavily in agriculture, such as soursop, nutmeg, and cocoa, do you think it can, let's say, help? Do you think it can help tourist income? We went through COVID and saw that the collapse of tourism. What do you think?
Well, obviously, and this is the paradox that exists in Grenada. Government is pretending to invest in tourism, but I don't think the government care much about that. I believe this government is just on their own to make some money, so they go for mega projects because the construction industry perhaps is the most corrupt industry in any part of the world, and is an area where people get a lot of opportunities to make money. But if you have a strong nutmeg industry in Grenada and a strong cocoa industry and a strong soursop industry, it will put more money in the farmers' hand. The farmers will more likely to employ more people, and you can even have agri-tourist project. For instance, Ramdani, and I want to be very, very practical when I speak. Ramdani perhaps could develop a strong program so you have tourists coming on Ramdani Estate. And perhaps Ramdani might even encourage the Catholic Church to open their door to tourists, because some tourists just want to go and pray and light a candle in a church for all the deeds that they do or what they might do when they come in your country. They like a little candle. So in the route, you have Belmont Estate have experimented with tourists on their farm. So you might find the foresters might say they might do that. In Hermitage area, they might find another agro tourist
in Hermitage
product, yeah. So I don't understand what these intelligentsia, who is so deeply involved in the government, what they're about. And that's why I say the farmer is so laid back. And the farmer put a lot of hope in them. And they just disappoint the farmer. And it's difficult to understand why, because it's so plain and so glaring. Because if you're pushing nutmeg and cocoa is such a powerful, romantic crop, the same farmer that has his land in Belvedere or in Cloget or in Pleasant that is heavily producing nutmeg, you might well encourage him to produce, his wife, to produce flowers on the side. So imagine Valentine, you have a nice gift with chocolate, flowers, a bottle of honey, and some grind nutmeg. You're surprised to know the value of this gift. But we have an agriculture in the Ministry of Agriculture. We're supposed to have a marketing arm. And in today's dispensation, marketing is not very expensive, because you could definitely use the technology to help you to market. So it's not very expensive. You have AI, and I'm entering areas I don't know about. Yes, scholar, welcome. Yeah. Yes, scholar, welcome.
Yes, Mr. Pierre, you're still on the agriculture program?
Yes, I'm still on the agriculture.
Yeah, we're still here.
Right. Mr. Pierre, one of the situations are happening in Grenada, especially I could talk about. If we have this barrier where an agriculture person is a dropout from school, and the barrier with the lawyers and all the doctors that go and study for umpty amount of years, they would not give the privilege to the agriculture man, because they believe that if the agriculture take off, a lot of people would not go and study. Because when you look at all the hotels that are coming in Grenada, the vast of food that they're importing, if the farmers really get that opportunity, then you'll find farmers making more money than lawyers and more money than doctors. And that's a barrier over the years because they still see the farmers as water boots and a cutlass man.
Yeah.
But we, every the same farmers and the same lawyers and doctors have to eat. So they does not want to make the agriculture man seem in any position at always keeping on every politician that come in power talking about the farmers, and they do nothing to assist them because they don't want you to come and compete with the lawyers and doctors in terms of certificate. But an opportunity is to help the farmer himself to go back to school and learn in a time like now so he could do farming more scientific. So one of the barriers that keep hamburging us for years is that barrier between those that go and study and the farmer that follow from school and doing well. Thank you, Mr. Pierre.
All right.
And it ought not to be. Because in yesteryear, most of the people who were doctors and lawyers were the children of farmers. Let me repeat that. Most of the people who were doctors and lawyers in yesteryear were the children of farmers. It's only in today's dispensation, as you have more scholarship provided by government, ordinary people, children, going on to doctors and lawyers. Because in yesteryear, government perhaps used to give 1 or 2 scholarships, and most of the people went and studied never come back. So for instance, Tillman Thomas is a lawyer, but it's Franco, his father, that sent him and study. Dr. Gibbs from Goa in the olden days is his parents that sent him and study. So it ought not to be, because some of the richest people that pass in Grenada are farmers. We have some mentality problem, because some of our children, when they go to school, they kind of turn lunatic. The kind of education system they have, they don't want to come back and invest in the farm. And we have seen that. We have had a lot of people from Hermitage, Pleasance, Parkleet, Blaise, Brudge Munich, that went away. And they never returned. And some of them parents was young millionaires. They had a lot of land, 50, 60 acres of land. But the farmers are not necessarily broken people. Because if you have 10 acres of land in Grenada, you can make serious money from it. A 10 acres of land should bring you, if you're serious in it, over $100,000 per annum. So I think it's a question of attitude and a mentality change. I always say Grenada have electricity, telephone, water, and internet. We're second to none, and we're better than most, and we're comparable with the best. So when you're talking about countries that can take off in the Caribbean easily, Grenada practically leads. But we seem to have a poor mentality. Children coming from school, they want to look for a job. So you might have a man with 10, 25 acres of land. The majority of the land in Bamboo, Balije, and Bokano. Bamboo, Balije, and Bokano. The majority of land in it. The child is working in St. George's for $2,000 a month. And the parent playing the maid in the house, is making more money, more income from the farmer than the child working in school. The only thing the child is paying bill home. And when they make a child, the parents minding the child. But some of the other Grenadians seems to want to gravitate to classism. And that's what perhaps make it so easy for Deaton. Somebody would tell you they're working in Hubbard's, or Hoggins, or Steeler, any one of the big companies in. The next question, ask them what they're working for. Automatically they can't tell you the shame. But they have a big status.
Uniform.
And they have the uniform and they have a big name. Whereas somebody is working in the field. In Grenada now, it costs $60 a day for a worker to work with you in agriculture. You have to be damn good as an employer to get a worker to stay in your land 3-4 hours. You have to be good. And that worker may have his other activities that he carries out that generate money. And he may well be making $100 a day. Because he have his cow that he have grazing in everybody's land, including yours. And he go and do other things, 2-3 tasks sometime in a day. But you working in St. George's and you're paying boss $500. So it seems that a lot of people like the fact that they're working for a big company in Grenada and that perhaps give them a little prestige. And maybe that is why you hear people talk about vulnerable and turn up their nose at the post so much. And why people buy a car, and when they buy a car, they believe there is a heavyweight. And they can't buy gas. And you have some young men, they sell 2 pieces of drugs. They have some $5 pack up in their pocket. And then they want to box everybody in tongue because they believe they're rich. So I think we have a serious mentality and attitude problem that result in a negative culture. And it is compounded because it's our children that on the cocoa board and nutmeg board, you know. It's our children that they fighting down us. It's not Europeans. And it's not to say they don't know. So this is heartbreaking. And we believe that when we speak about it, we will provoke discussion. But in the meantime, we challenge them. They wouldn't answer these questions. They know they could do better. They have not helped the nutmeg farmer. They should be advising the nutmeg and cocoa and sauce-up farmer. We should have endless training session on hand pollination in sauce-up. They tell you can increase your production by 200-300% if you involve in hand pollination.
I have a nice one here for you again. Somebody saying, you're right. We the people, including the teachers, have to educate the youths, but the government have to lead and the parents have to follow to educate the children. And they also went on to say good morning to Enki. Mr. P, a great example. See that in Northwest I see that in Northwest St. George's where I have my house. I told the young man, your grandparents have all these abandoned land. Why not go into agriculture? And he put a question mark right there.
Yeah, you see, I like how you talk about the parents, but it's our children that are in government, you know. These political lunatics we have there is our children. We that make them. Look at the age group.
I know.
They run around the 50, 60 age group. It's our children.
Late 40s, early 50s.
And they come from, their parents was poor like church mice, you know. Every member of the government, their children was poor as church mice. Lady Murray was shedding tears. It's our children are there. So, yes, we could blame the parents, but I ask who teach the parents? I always ask, when I meet my teachers who don't like me here at all. Because they say it's not them. I say, who teach the parents? You teach the parents. And you that teach this dotish politician. You. So, I believe perhaps we could take some examples from other people in the world. Singapore, Japan, Israel, the United States of America, the traditional farmers in America. You see individuals 13 years in America telling you I'm a traditional farmer. My great-grandfather was a farmer and this was a farmer and that was a farmer. Americans like to say my father was a police and I'm a police and this is a police. In Grenada, if you're a farmer, your child want to be farmer. So we need to have discussion on these issues. And the farmer need to decide to wake up And those people with a briefcase or certificate, we have to hold them accountable. How you could be so bright and so stupid? Because you have stupidity among stupid people, and you have stupidity among intelligent people too, you know. And the worst thing is when intelligent people are stupid. So we have the traditional farmers in Grenada. They're still there. They have the lands. The foresters there, Ramnani there, Belmont Estate there. They're still there. They still have the land. They still employ a few people. They still depend on cocoa. What is the government attitude to Ramnani? Ramnani has the ability, the potential, the land to employ 50, 70 people. That is a significant amount. Do you have any program to encourage these people to help to absorb the unemployed? Yes, we could call all kind of percentage that unemployed, that employ and say we don't have employment. I met a little sister. I said, your daughter, you more look as an athlete. You wake up 5 o'clock in the morning to bring your 2 children by your sister to take care of them because you have to give sister money because she put to. And you jump in a bus to go to St. George's to work 8. And by the time you come back after 4:30, you're reaching home 6. And you have a young, aggressive boyfriend. You have to fight to leave the bed before 3. Because if he hold you 3, you're working late. I say, you're an athlete child, you got dead. And then the boy is so suspicious of you because you had no time for him. Mm-hmm. No, we have to sit down and discuss these issues. And our people coming on to school have to know you could have an additional source of income. And one of the sources of income that you could have could well be in agriculture. Because you have a plethora of opportunities in agriculture. So the Cocoa Association and the Nutmeg Association, the farmers have to say to them, we need husbandry advice. What advice you giving us as a result of the fact that we are so vulnerable to climate change? Well, that is climate change too, you know. To tell the people whether they should prune the tall nutmeg tree and how they could do to prevent the nutmeg tree to growing too tall, because nutmeg don't have a root system for the height of the nutmeg tree. But because of phototropic, I don't know if that is a good word, the competition for light, the nutmeg have to grow tall to get light. So if you give it more room, it wouldn't be necessary for it to go so tall. And because the nutmeg have to grow so tall, it is unproductive. I mean, you can have all these people going and spend years in the university, and when they come back, they lack the ability to practicalize their certification. And that is why I say one group that disappoints our traditional farmers is our intelligentsia. This is not about speaking good English. This is not about rattling grammar better than Paul Schoon. Paul Schoon could speak better than the Queen. This is about how the farmers could make more money in the land. When you go to the University of the West Indies, and I dare anybody to do it, go and watch the farm. The farm is not designed for production. So they might have a cow there that had 20 years. They keep it for disease, to teach the people about disease, not to make money. When you go and you look at the rabbit tree, don't surprise if you see steel cage and you see a man have a blowtorch to sterilize it. It is not practical. So when they come back from university, they don't know how to practicalize a certification. We have some children in Cuba now, and some people worried about them. I don't worry about them. If the Cuban could survive, you must survive. They might make better people when they come back.
Good morning to Sky.
Yes, we have a,
You have a minute left, Mr. Pierre.
well, as we come to the end of this program today,
First part of the program.
the program is basically to provoke discussion. We want our farmers start to ask themselves questions. What the authorities is doing to provide information for us. What am I doing to make more money in my land? Because that is what it should be. You have 5 acres of land. How could I make more money? I'm sending my children to school. Could I hold a discussion with them and say, how could we make more money in the land? Brothers, we always encourage you to subscribe to our program, share our program,
Like it.
and don't run. Stick around for the next part of the program,
Pure politics.
which will be straight politics. And today we're asking questions. Stick around.
Politics, religion, and regional, international, spiritual issues too. Agricultural, environmental, and trending to subject matter. We fear none, we back down. Freedom of speech is enshrined in the land. God, we freedom.